had the scanner, where we basically took our programs and we essentially tokenized them. And the whole point of that assignment really was, one, to get you more familiar with tokens and the concept of breaking a program down into smaller chunks, and two, to really show you that it's tedious. And I think we all kind of discovered that when we looked at the test cases and went, holy crap, the average is like a 6 out of 25. But that's okay, right? We're learning, we're figuring things out. And we're going to be moving on from that to our parser. And we're going to be building our parser using something called Java CC. And this is essentially just a Java compiler. We're going to be building it using a mini java.jj file, but it's kind of getting a little hectic here, and I can hear some beeping. So tell you what, let's transition to somewhere safer and try it again. All right, so we're safe. We made it to the Trader Joe's, and we're all good. And the parser is different than the scanner, and I was trying to figure out how I would bring this to you. In the scanner, what we were concerned about is that our tokens matched, but our parser is more direct, where a scanner was basically like, hey, is this a valid barcode? A parser would make sure that this actually scans and it's a valid barcode for this store. So okay, we made it back, and the mini Java parser we're essentially going to be building is two parts. We have this idea of tokenizing, where we'll build our scanner using regular expressions, and then we'll be doing the actual grammar checking. So you can read in a token, same as normal, and then you'll actually have to pair that with a grammar. And if the programs you're writing aren't adherent to the specifics of the mini Java language, which you'll find on the project spec sheet, you'll be stuck out in the lobby. Cat, you have the keys. Cat. So, before I lose you, I've got about 40 seconds before your retention goes out the window. So let's walk through this really quickly. We'll go over the most important things. So the playthrough is going to talk about most of this, but what I want to cover here, while I have your attention, is the building of your tokens. A lot of these, we have these reserved words where we're throwing in optional statements here. We basically want to continue with that, so we can keep throwing optionals in our reserved words, and that way we pick them out. So we could throw in an option for class. In fact, I think we have one already. If we scroll up here, we do. So if we wanted to, we can just handle that with the class block and read that in as a token, and that would work perfectly, I believe. So we can build that out instead of just using straight strings. Both will work, but it's a lot cleaner if you throw it in tokens. It makes a lot more sense. And it also prevents some issues from happening in Java CC. We then have our structure, which we're building out, and we're basically just reading in the grammar, which we have up here. So we're basically saying, hey, the identifier that we read in as part of our main class declaration, we want to save that in a token variable called name. And we're denoting that it's an identifier because we're parsing in this ID object, which I will have you guys make. I don't think I gave that to you. So you're going to have to create that somewhere using regular expression rules and logic. We then parse in this value, we go public static void main, and we can see that it mirrors this main class value right here. And that's really our purpose here, is that we're building out this Java CC logic to handle reading in these structures and making sure it maps to our grammar. Our next goal is adding this value to some sort of accounting values. And we basically do that by having this idea of formal structures. And if we look over at our absent files, we have formals.absent, if we can find it. And we can see that a formal has a type associated with it and a string name. So we can see that we're basically building our formals list with value formal, which we then toss in as the type for an array type that we're reading in of different identifiers, right? And then the string as its right hand. So we have the type, which was the array type of string, and then the actual name is whatever we're parsing in, right? The argument to string. We then have a look ahead value, and what this is essentially doing is looking ahead into our var declaration method, which is down here, and looking at the first value that we're reading in, which is type. So we're basically using this as a little cheat to identify where we need to go next at this stage. And I've given you some examples on how to do this. If we look at our main class, we have half of this built out. But if we look at thread declaration, we actually have the entirety of thread declaration that I've given to you. And I've also given var declaration. So I think these are two really good starting points where you can basically say, hey, what do I need to do for this, or how do I start? I would say your first goal is to draw out how these are operating, looking at class, name, extends, and threads, and so forth, and then looking at all the absent files that map to absent.var_decl, absent.method_decl, absent.thread_decl, field declaration, and trying to map out what these are doing and what this function is doing. And you can see that we're at about 253 lines, and we haven't even really started touching on a lot of the base types. So we have in our grammar, if I pull it up very quickly, we have these concepts of base types, and I am pulling it up as I'm talking. I've ran out of time to formally do the back half of this video, so you're going to have to bear with it. We have these base types where we have statements and we have expressions that we can break down with. But what do we notice about these expressions? Well, the left-hand side maps directly to the right-hand side for all of these values. And what do we notice about these values? We're dealing with some issues, and we've got two separate issues that you're going to have to resolve. And remember, the precedence of all of these is different, right? The precedence of assessing equality is different than the precedence of plus. So these precedent rules are given to you in the assignment spec, so you'll have to go through and kind of understand those. But they're also, pretty generally available if you just Google them. So your first step is to basically get these very simple methods working, the ones that I've pretty much almost given you. And then my advice is to start with very simple stuff, just parsing in integer values. So you can look at the examples I gave you in the spec and really start breaking apart those really, really simple test cases. I think there's one where it's just a print statement. I would try that. There's one that should just be an integer value or a unary value. I think those are great test cases to start with also. Good luck.